Welcome to episode 154 of the Whatnauts review show, where every week we pick a story and we talk about it. This could be a movie, TV series, anime, manga, comic book, audio drama, all kinds of entertainment. We watch it, read it, listen to it, and then we come back here and we discuss it. My name is Melissa Wilkinson, and I am joined as always by Kyle Springer.
Hello, how's it
I'm good. How are you feeling this day?
I'm feeling a lot better. I got sick
Good.
last night, so we kind of postponed this by a few hours, but feeling a lot better, and my weekend has been generally very good. So
Nice.
I've been reading a lot of old Teen Titans comics, so that's what I spent
How
most
old?
of the day. From the late 80s.
Okay.
So I think I'm almost in the 90s, but I'm like a year and a half away, I think. So we're getting there. We're getting there. But that's what I was up to yesterday, and watching more of The Sopranos. But that was good. How are you, though? What has your weekend been like?
Oh, it's been fine. I had time today to go to Sam's Club and buy like 18,000 paper towels, you know, the Sam's
Nice.
Club amount of things that you get.
Right, yeah. Okay, that sounds good. I remember it was always a lot of fun going to Sam's Club when I was a kid.
It
'cause I could
is.
just be like, let's get all the things. And my parents would be like, all right, sure, let's do it. Let's just stock up now.
It's too much for a single woman to be allowed. I'm amazed that like they let me have an individual membership just for me. I never buy that much food or anything. I can't go completely bananas because it's just me and my roommate, and there's no guarantee my roommate will eat anything I get. So I
Sure,
just buy
yeah.
like dry goods. I did look at their flowers today, though. I got a beautiful bouquet of flowers for pretty
Okay.
cheap.
There you go. That works. Well, what are we here to talk about this week, Melissa?
We are continuing and concluding our monthly ongoing series, watching every season of Halt and Catch Fire. This is our fourth and final episode about season 4.
Well, fourth and final episode about Halt and Catch Fire. Our first
Yes, yeah.
and last one on season 4. Yeah. Melissa, I loved this season. This season
glad.
was so
I loved
good.
it too.
It was amazing. I have to say, I think this was my favorite season of the show. It beat out season 1 for me. If you guys have heard me talk on the previous ones, I was like, yeah, I really, really loved season 1, and then season 2 and 3 just kind of still good, wasn't as good, and they just kind of plateaued for me. Right? I guess vallied. Is that the right word? Is that the right way to put it? Like it dipped down low
Perhaps.
and then like stayed.
There was a
stayed low.
divot, you know.
Yeah. But this I was super excited for going into, and so I hoped it wasn't going to disappoint, and it did not. Absolutely did not. And apparently still to this day, season 4 of the show is at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I'm glad.
It is so
Nice.
good.
Oh, that's really good to hear. Yeah, season 4 was the season where like I finally locked in on what the show is about and how the show really works. I thought I understood it before, but season 4 brings
Yeah.
you a lot of clarity, and it's got so many different emotions in it. I think season 4 has got the saddest stuff I've ever seen from the show. And the funniest thing I've seen from the show. There's a bit in here in more than otherwise a very sad episode that is the hardest I have laughed in months.
Amazing. Good stuff. Yeah, I loved this season a lot. I think what would have been a major complaint from me if it still had the like the feeling of season 2 and 3 was that they kind of pulled a bait and switch on us. It seemed like they were gonna be working on a browser, and then that's not what this season was about, they kind of moved on from that immediately and was like, let's make something else instead. And I was okay with that, and was
Yeah.
just like, the stuff that they're doing here is fascinating. The team is kind of all back together, or at least in a much smaller space where it seems like they
Yeah.
are. They are kind of sort of finally dealing with some of their problems, and yeah, like it felt like they hit their stride, which is both a good and bad thing, because this was the final season of the show. So it was just like, oh man, now I want more. Like, I want to see them now go on to invent social media and stuff like that. But yeah, this show, I think, did a lot to wrap things up and do it in a brilliant way. So I liked
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure. Season 4 went in a lot of different directions than how we thought it was going to go based on how season
Yeah.
3 ended. I listened back to that episode and there's so many things that we said, yeah, it seems like they're going in that direction, that it does completely divert. And even when I started the final episode, I'm like, I don't know what I want out of this. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. And then 50 minutes later, I'm like, that was it. That was what I wanted. That was perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. It like, to me, I went in wanting to chase that first high of
Yeah.
just like, season 1 was so good. Like, give me some more mystery, give me some more Joe McMillan being Joe McMillan, and it both was and was not that. And so yeah, I ended up being, well, that's not what I wanted or expected, but man, that was great. That was so
Yeah.
good. So I am excited to dive in and talk a little bit more about this season. I do have to say, you mentioned that it went in a lot of different directions that you weren't expecting. I think I would agree, but I think I would also say, like, they just, for a fourth and final season, like, it had a lot of stuff in there, like introducing new storylines or characters that weren't really in there. Like, well, I guess there was some that were in there, we just never focused on. That I thought was amazing, and I loved that they included them, and that we got to see things from their perspective, and it just had a lot in there, and I think any other show, this would have felt maybe bloated or too much. But like we said, I think they finally hit their stride and was like, nah, we got this. Like, this is
Yes.
good. We know how we are wrapping this up and stuff like that. So I was very satisfied with season 4. Indeed. Do you have any other, like, general thoughts that you want to add to that before we do this synopsis?
I think just to detail what I was saying earlier, we've spent so much time wondering, where is this going? What is this building to? What's going to be the climax of this series? And it was like halfway through season 4 that I figured out, oh, it's not going anywhere. Like, we really are just watching a decade of these people's lives. Like,
right, yeah.
they just cut this out of the middle. It is literally a slice of life story. And it's going places, but not in, like, as traditional of a narrative structure, and that's okay.
Yeah, like, you think from season 1 that they're gonna be, like, chasing success, which they kind of are, but by the end of this show, you realize, yeah, that they're starting to measure success in different ways. Like, okay, my job may have had some ups and downs, but how's my family? Or how is X, Y, and Z, or something else, right? Like, they start wrestling with this idea of, it seems like this ride isn't going to end. Like, technology is always going to be moving forward. So when am I satisfied?
Yes.
Yeah, and they have to deal with that and figure out when they are jumping off the train. So
Yeah. The show isn't about in season 4 it gets to be not about winning, but about defining for yourself what your win condition is.
yes, yeah, exactly. Let's do a bit of a synopsis. Catch people up without really spoiling them, because we'll get into spoilers after that.
We've got the first episode starts with this montage. You see Gordon and Joe working together, building up this internet business. They're still working on that browser project with Cam, who's back in Japan. That encompasses several years. The majority of the season takes place in like 93 up to 94. So we've jumped even from the finale of last season, which was 1990. And they moved from a browser project into a search engine project. So they're working on one over there, and then Donna at her venture capital firm starts a rival search engine project.
Yeah, she kind of stormed off at the end of last season and was like, I'm going to go be their competitor. Ha!
Well, because Cameron was like, I'm not working with you.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we start off. They start making this browser, but it very quickly shifts gears, and it seems like they are instead trying to create like the home page. Like like when you sign on to your internet, this is the first thing that pops up. That's what they are essentially chasing. And trying to figure out. And they have some ideas that come from some surprising sources and stuff like that. And yeah, this was a lot of fun. This touched on some things that I was not expecting, some characters that were included that, like I mentioned, did not expect them, but it was nice to have them involved, and ends up being very happy and very sad, and yeah, great stuff.
Very touching, yes.
Great stuff indeed. Okay, let's get into a little bit of housekeeping, and then we will finally get on to spoilers. So if you did not know, we have multiple podcasts here at the Whatnauts. You guys can find out more information on our website, which is thewhatnauts.com, as well as your favorite podcasting platform of choice. I wonder what Joe McMillan would think of podcasts now. Wow.
Oh my God.
Okay. Just type in the Whatnauts and all of our shows will pop up right there. If you like what we do, patreon.com/thewhatnauts is where you can support us for as little as $1 a month. We have a $3 tier, which will get you all kinds of exclusive content. And we have something recent up. It's an update to our 2021 video game fantasy draft. But be also on the lookout. We're hoping to record the next one at the start of May. And we are hoping to come up with a bunch of things. It's hard to explain. We're making bingo cards for this show, for the review show, that we can kind of play in the background. And the bingo cards will be filled out with a bunch of like comic book and movie tropes and stuff like that. So as we are rating and watching these things, we can gamify it somehow, some way. So
yeah,
that should be fun. Last but not least, big shout out to our Patreon supporters at the $5 tier and above. So thank you, Sam, and thank you, Greg, for helping us out. It means a lot. Thank you for helping to keep the mics on. Last but not least, we don't live stream this show, but we are on Twitch usually every Wednesday, Friday, and Sundays. I won't be there today since we are recording multiple podcasts on this Sunday afternoon, but we are usually there doing all of that stuff. So be on the lookout for those streams at twitch.tv/thewhatnauts. And if you, again, like what we do, you can subscribe to our channel there. And if you have Amazon Prime, you also have Twitch Prime, which means you can link your accounts and then you get a free subscription to give out to the streamer of your choice. And we'd love that to be we would love that to be us here at the Whatnauts, because that means we can make bigger and better content for you down the road. So there you go. Melissa, that has wrapped us up for housekeeping. So let's get on to spoilers. Ha! We're in the spoiler mode.
Wow.
Dumbledore dies. I can't believe it. Back with that one.
No, but we do have a very important death this season, which
We do.
Do you want to start there? What do you want to start with?
Let's start with that because I think that was something this show has kind of been working up towards.
Yes.
And it happened, and before it happened, I was like, oh, this is it. This is the moment. Because at first I was just like, what is going on? This season has had this like strange motif where they're doing a lot of lens flares, and I'm noticing them especially when Gordon is feeling strange. And I was just like, huh. And then there's this big one, and then he starts like hearing things, and I was like, oh no, this is it. This sucks. But yeah.
What really set it up for me is the scene before that, which is Joe pulling up to Donna's house, and he happens to pull up while she's like standing in the yard taking the trash out or whatever. And she sees him pull up, and she's like, is something wrong? Like, in her head, the only reason Joe would come see her is if like something has happened to Gordon. And he's like, no, nothing's wrong. I don't understand why you've given us this business idea. Why are you doing this? Like, he's suspicious, but he also like wants information to figure out his suspicions. He's not there to be super argumentative, just like, Donna, what is your deal? What's been happening with you? But they get into this whole argument. They have this whole scene, and then it cuts to Gordon, and I'm like, is this it? Did the previous scene go, you must only be here if Gordon's dead? Oh, Gordon's not dead? Cut to Gordon. No, now is when Gordon dies.
We're
you've been reassured that he is alive.
We're laughing not because it's funny, but just it's so ironic, and it's so like it sucks. Like I was genuinely sad when he died. I was like, this sucks. Like I was hoping it wouldn't happen, but it is kind of the event that starts wrapping things up. It's like, okay, well, that happened, so I guess this is as good a time as any to move on and do something else. And that was like the catalyst that started wrapping up this show.
And he dies in episode 7 of a 10-episode season. And I knew something bad was happening with Gordon. At first I thought, well, maybe he's just like, he needs to be hospitalized. Maybe he's not immediately dead. So I'm like, what are we going to do for 3 episodes without Gordon? Gordon is the best part. Like, I love all of these characters, but there's this special chaotic energy around Gordon that has been there the whole time. Like, in season 1, I was like, surely this will kill Gordon. Gordon is going to get himself to deep trouble. Gordon's going to ruin everything. And he hung on for so long.
He did.
He is dead. And you're like, oh, Gordon, gone too soon.
Yeah. Yeah, because when you think about it, like it feels like it's been a long time. Because let's be honest, technology moved very, very fast, and still is. But like I remember in my lifetime some of these things happening, of just like, what is the internet? Like I've never heard of this thing, and to look at where we are now, like it moves so fast, and so I feel like it seems like we spent more time with Gordon than we did. Because at the end of the day, yeah, it was 10-ish years. Like we spent a decade with them, and we
11 or
didn't even
more,
get to
yeah.
see all of that. And yeah, like I want to say he was gone too soon, but he held on for quite a while. But it was also like, well, it was only like 10 years ish. Like that's not like things can move fast in that
Yeah.
amount of
Yeah.
time. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
I guess he lasted a long time in the scope of the show, but he is 40. One of the first episode features Gordon's 40th birthday party, which so we get this time
It's a
skip.
wild birthday
We've moved
party.
forward. We're in like 1993. And this is the first episode is catching us up on where everybody is in their lives. And then it hard cuts to the Blue Man Group. And for
Yeah,
like a
'cause
minute,
what's
you're just
more
watching a
90s than the
Blue
Blue
Man
Man
Group without
Group?
any context. And then you realize Gordon is throwing himself this big birthday party and he has enough money that he hired the Blue Man Group. And he goes up there and he does this
Wild.
stunt with them where they like cover him in a jumpsuit and they cover him with paint and they like swing his body against a huge canvas and he's like, I'm a human paintbrush. And it's so weird and funny. And at the end of the day, it's like, Gordon, you were a human paintbrush.
You created
You were
things.
this thing. Yeah, and it's so fitting because one of the themes of the show has been that Gordon is not the idea person. Somebody else gives him an idea, he can run with it, he can execute it, he can figure out how to make that work, but he can't generate anything. Joe is the painter, Gordon is the paintbrush.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 That's a good metaphor. I didn't think about it that way. Huh. But yeah, like it just it was definitely a sad moment. I think it was a good way to kind of wrap up the show. Like it felt like a definitive like, okay, this is. Yeah, and now I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but it started to be just like, okay, this seems like the train is stopping. Like we need to move on and go somewhere else. But let me ask you this. So according to the Wikipedia, they knew that the fourth season was going to be their final one. So they ended things on their terms, so to speak. However, I felt like this could have gone on to maybe a fifth season. And I don't know if there was talks about one or if they had plans like, hey, in case we do, this is what will happen. Did you feel like, because going into this and watching it, I'm not sure how much knowledge you knew about all the background stuff. So did this feel like it was cut short to you?
No. Every one of these seasons, well, seasons 2, 3, and 4, season 1's got like a very clear mission statement from the beginning about building that computer. Seasons 2, 3, and 4 all like take a couple episodes to get their feet under them. Not that the first couple episodes are filler and it's not good yet, just that it's not until a little bit in that you realize, okay, this is the arc of the season. This is like the ongoing projects that they're going to be working on professionally and personally. And I felt that way with this season too. But I think they did lock in on that search engine homepage thing early enough that I felt like I had a sense of direction. Yeah. We're establishing some character dynamics pretty early. But it was just me sitting in that feeling of, where is it going? Is this it? Is this like the final big thing? Is this the climax project? And then a while after that, I was like, oh, no, it isn't. Nothing is. The climax project will be when they're like 64 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always going to be one more thing. But yeah, like I felt like going into this one, it did feel like the internet was the like, the internet, like this is the holy grail, right? So it did feel like, okay, this is probably going to be an ending, which I mean, I did know that this was the last season, but I didn't have the information of like, did they know this was gonna be the last season going into it when they started writing it? Did something else? Did they start talking about season 5? Did they have a plan or no? But yeah, like I almost felt like it was cut short. Like I knew that Gordon's death would have been the thing to like wrap this season up, but I felt like the show could have continued or moved on with other characters, because one of the things that Joe keeps saying to Cameron is that she is the next generation. However, all of this whole show, they're kind of in this generation together doing all the work there, and then by the end of the show they both are like, all right, well, that's kind of it, except we do get this thing that they are gonna continue, or Cameron is at least gonna continue working, but we also get another character in this season that is like, oh, they have talent at this thing. They could be going places. And I was like, huh, I wonder if they're gonna do something where they start to kill off some of these other characters and show more of this next generation.
Yeah, the young Avengers
or
of
not.
Halt and Catch Fire.
Right? Yeah. No. But yeah, just like to not necessarily kill off. I guess that's a bad way to put it. Like, Joe, you're dead next. Get out of here. But just to start to involve younger characters who were like, no, we have the ideas now. You guys don't. Like, the stuff that you're talking about, like, that's good for you. But the internet is going in this direction, right? Like, we want social media. We want X, Y, and Z. We want MySpace, Zanga, right? There could have been something like that to just see them in a certain way, to see them come to a stop or to a halt, in the sense like, well, hey, you're too old to kind of realize what this is or what this potential is. I mean, because that's kind of what happened to my parents. Like, my parents didn't grow up with them, but have been around computers basically since you could. And yet I know computers more than they do, despite they've had to work on them. They've had, like, my mom has had stuff where, you know, she's sending emails back and forth and doing Word and Excel and all of that stuff. And then I try to get her to, like, delete an email, and she's just like, I don't know how to do that. I'm like, you've been doing this for 20 years. Like, what do you mean? Or I'll explain. Like, I just taught my parents how to take a YouTube video on their phone and cast it on to their smart TV, and they were like, "Is this new?" I was like, "No, this has been around for like 10 years." like, and they're just like, "Well, how would we have known this stuff?" I mean, yeah, it's not exactly that old, but it's like how would we have known this stuff? And it's like, well, like, these things come with instructions, and like, you guys know how to. If there is something you want to know how to do, you know that Google exists, you know that YouTube exists, you know how to look up this stuff. I've seen you do it, but then there are times when they just, like, they've gotten to an age where I guess it's just them being stubborn or something, where they, like, just don't want to teach themselves. I'm not sure if that's a common thing, but that's at least what I've seen with my parents. And it'd be interesting to see something like that with these these characters of like, hey, this is moving too fast. and we can't keep up with this, and like what we thought it was and what we want it to be is not necessarily what everyone else wants it to be. But I don't know, like I guess that just made me feel like it got cut short of like, well, he's dead. Show's over. Okay. Cool, I guess.
No, I don't remember what it was that made me click into this, but I did have the revelation of it's not going anywhere. We're just seeing 40 episodes worth of these people's lives, and episode 40 isn't going to be this triumphant moment. There will be some victory, there will be growth, there will be happiness, but it's not that, and then they just spin their wheels until the end of their lives.
Yeah.
Like I could really, I don't know, something really gave me that feeling. Especially because I'm like, there's so many motifs looping around throughout this series. Like you see these patterns, you see certain actions happen over and over again. A wild thing I realized, somebody gets divorced every season.
Okay.
And seasons 2, 3, and 4 all have a couple eloping.
Interesting.
Which is a very specific pattern. At the end of the day, every single major adult character is divorced.
Yeah. Joe's yeah, okay. Yeah, they are.
All of them, even down to Diane. You know, this is her when she marries Boz. It's at least her second marriage. The only adult who, as far as we know, is not divorced was Ryan.
True.
Which is just such an odd thing to keep throwing into a show that is about computers. Like it's about personal relationships and business relationships and how they work around this industry. The fact that it happens over and over and over again is weirdly funny to me.
Yeah. Well, they do often say that business relationships are like marriages and stuff like that. So that is a kind of like weird theme in this of like, let's focus on marriages and relationships and partnerships and stuff like that, because it happens in their business relationships too, right? Where they start working together and they have a great thing going, and then something happens and, oh, you lied about this, or you went behind my back about this, or this thing happened and, well, now fuck you. So we're, you know, and then it's like, okay, well, I've forgiven you for that thing. Maybe we can work on something else, because that was fun that one time that we did that. And they start working on something else, and then something else happens. You lied about this, and fuck you for that. And, you know, so.
I love that. This is a story that started out with two couples. You've got Donna and Gordon, and then you've got Joe and Cameron, which is pretty much a friends with benefits situation at the very beginning of the series. But, you know, they're each other. They're an item so consistently.
Yeah.
And then the series ends with neither of those romantic relationships work, but the platonic relationships, Donna and Cameron, are like, most of the last episode is Donna and Cameron, like the culmination. They're like they come out as like the most important relationship in the entire series. And like Joe and Gordon work together so much better than they worked with anybody else. And it was so touching to me then that final scene where we see that Joe has become a professor, and we look at his office and he's got the giant there, and he's got this bookshelf in his office with all these books he's been reading. I don't know what he's a professor of. Maybe it is English literature. It just says
computer
humanities.
Science.
Who knows?
Yeah. Humanities and sciences. So I would assume some kind of like computer engineer. I don't know.
Well, he doesn't know that, though. He's got a business degree, I think. Who knows what Joe is teaching? But he's got a photo of Cameron framed on the bookshelf. But on his desk, right in front of him, where we'd look at it every day, is this big, beautifully framed portrait of Gordon. Like, Cameron's there. Cameron's always going to be a part of his life. But, like, Gordon gets the place of honor.
Yeah, I think he was the one that had the most effect on him. Because I like... When we see them meet, I I think Joe doesn't realize the effect that he's going to have, because he just thinks like, hey, you're a nobody engineer who had talent. So let me exploit that and get what I want, right? And he just thinks he's kind of inconsequential. But then, yeah, by the end of this show, when Gordon dies, Joe is just wrecked. Like he is the one by far taking it the
Yes.
hardest, and he just doesn't know what to do, doesn't know how to grieve, doesn't really know how to move on exactly until much later on, and he kind of has to be forced into grieving of when they're sitting there at the dinner table and they're sharing stories, and he, like, just 2 seconds ago he was like, I don't want to do this, like I don't want to do this right now, and he's at a place where like he can't say no and do that, and he's just like, you know what, this is actually good that we are sharing stories and stuff like this. Like, this is nice that we get to remember him that way. So
Another bit in that scene I like is that it's the whole family's over at Gordon's house to pack up the stuff. And Boz comes over later in the day, and like he's made a big pot of chili on the stove. And you can tell Joe has just been running himself ragged, like exhausted, completely out of it, not eating. And Boz is like, hey, I made this chili. Can you try it and make sure it's not too spicy for the girls? I don't have that sense anymore. I can't tell if it's too spicy. And so he has to like make Joe do that. And there's a scene of Joe sitting there sadly eating chili, just despondently eating a bowl of chili.
I loved that
Boz
scene
keeps
though.
An eye on him from the kitchen.
Because he genuinely, like, he wasn't making him taste test it for the girls.
Yes.
Like, he genuinely was like, Joe, I need to look out for you. You're a wreck. Eat something. And he's just like, no.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, at least do it for the girls and see if it's spicy enough. He just made up something. And yeah, he starts to walk away and he looks back and you can just see him like sadly pull this bowl up and just eat this chili.
That episode is such a simulacrum of everything the show does. It's so tense and stressful and tragic.
Yeah.
And this is the episode with the funniest thing I've seen in months. So at this point, the Clark kids they're teenagers. I think they're like 18 and 14. And Haley has become a big comedy nerd. Like, she loves stand-up. She quotes Kids in the Hall sketches. She's 2 They Might Be Giants posters in her room, which I really appreciated. And they were bagging up all of Gordon's clothes to take to Goodwill. And it turns out that one of the bags Joe took had a sweater in it that Haley really wanted to keep from her dad. So he's like, we'll get in the car. Come with me. Like, we'll go to the Goodwill. I just dropped him off. We can get it back. And Haley's sitting there with her Walkman. And Joe's like, hey, do you want to play your music on the stereo? And he's like, come on, I'm not that old. And when she's like, I don't think you'll get it. I don't think you'll like it. He's like, no, go ahead, put on. And what she puts on is the novelty tune.
Heads,
fish
roly
heads,
poly,
fish heads, roly poly fish heads, which I had on like a Dr. Demento cassette as a kid. Like, it was in that
I had
era.
something like that too. Yeah.
Comedy nerd, yes. And she puts that on, and slowly you just see any sense of comprehension drain out of Joe's face, and he just glances aside at her.
Like, what are you listening to?
Of all of the songs they could have picked for that scenario, like, they could have just picked like teenage girl music of that time, and instead they're like, no, we've set up like Haley's really into this weird comedy stuff. She's listening to the Fishhead song.
Right, like when was the Spice Girls a thing? Would that have been around this time? No, like I was thinking it was going to be something like that, and nope, it was fish heads, roly poly fish heads.
You could take that scene and dub over any song you wanted. It would be great.
Yeah, it was good. I think the funniest moments for me was just immediately they're like the the internet is brand new. They're discovering what all this stuff is, and of course, one of the first things that the internet is for porn. And they're what was the Smut Hut, and they got some like website called Smut Hut, and they're just sitting there. It's Smooth Oot. I don't know what this is, and the big picture is just downloading so slow, and it's in the background the whole time. Yeah.
Everybody's like screaming. Gordon's trying to like unplug the monitor. Joni's trying to cover Haley's eyes. It's really
Joni is the one who is like genuinely, yes, this is amazing that this is happening, but like my sister should not see this. It was so good. And then when Joe is making the commercial and he's like, and what do you want from the internet? And they're all just like, porn, 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 porn.
God, I love in the final episode when Donna and Cameron are catching up on what all the old mutiny coders got up to. Like one of them's like, what happened to that guy? And Donna's like, porn. And then Cameron's like, oh my God, right. Of course he'd be great in porn. He's got that mustache. And then Donna's like, no, I mean, he runs a porn server website. He's not doing it.
Yeah. He's still in the tech side of that, but like.
Yeah, let's talk about the girls. That was a really delightful addition to the show that we've taken up so much time that these like cute little girls from season 1 are grown up now and they're like full parts of the plot now.
Mm-hmm. Well, we got to see Joni in season 3. She was like 15, 16-ish. And I liked seeing her. Didn't necessarily like her character.
She's sort of a standard teenager with attitude. There wasn't anything very specific about her. She's still a solid character. She goes to some really sweet places.
I didn't mind her. Like, it made sense, but it was just like I don't need to see her on screen all that much. And I felt mostly the same way with her in season 4. There were some more redeeming moments, but I absolutely loved Haley. Haley was great. And I think maybe my favorite character in season 4, period. Mm-hmm. She was wonderful. And it was interesting to see this like realization of Gordon, who didn't really understand her and arguably still didn't by the end exactly, but just had this revelation of just, oh, she's into technology and coding and all of that stuff too. Huh. Okay, like I didn't know that. And now he finally has something that he can like relate to her. And yeah, I thought that was a beautiful moment. And then they take her idea and they run with it, and she just lights up. She just she has that moment where they're doing the like, let's see how many websites we can document by the end of the week.
Yes.
And she is going for it, and she is laughing, and they're like, we got another one for this. And she has this big old surfboard trophy, and she's just in her space.
She gets to throw a pie in Gordon's face. Like, whoever wins that game, I guess, it seems like Joe and Gordon take turns. She just throws a pie in her dad's face. It's so funny.
It's so great. Like, I like, that was a wonderful moment. She was a wonderful character. I like what they did with her character and making her a lesbian, or at least bi or something. And like, not mentioning that, but mentioning that in different ways. Like, it was one of those things that I wasn't thinking about it. I didn't like think anything. I didn't think much about it until the scene where Joe is at the restaurant filming her, and it clicks with him instantly, and I was just like, oh, now I get it too, because I can see his reaction to it. It made sense. It was just like, she likes her. Okay, interesting. That's neat. And so then now he has a thing to relate to her, and he can. He also kind of takes on this like father-like relationship with her, and that was neat. So.
Yeah, I could tell. I think from that first scene where we see Haley in the season, because she is like skipping school to hang out at this restaurant and like talking to this one waitress. And I'm like, I bet she's there because she has a crush on that waitress. And I love how Gordon realizes that, because there's we see Haley's birthday in one of these episodes, and what she wants to do is go shoot off model rockets. Because there's a scene where Gordon's like, Haley, I've got something very serious I want to talk to you about. And then he opens the door and he's like, rockets! All these model rockets laid out on the conference table, and they shoot rockets off that day. It's really sweet. It's so wholesome. And like, she had painted these like those sailor tattoos of like swallow birds on the rocket. And Gordon's saying like, yeah, Haley told me like these birds represent these things. Isn't that cool? And then later he stops in at that restaurant she goes to, and he sees that waitress, and he sees that she has those birds tattooed on her chest. And then it like clicks with him like, oh, that's why.
It probably wouldn't have clicked with him right away, but Joe did hint at it. Like, he's like, are you sure she's there for the food? And
he's like, Haley is a lot like me at that age.
Like, so that first scene when she's at the restaurant, I didn't put it together because she's not paying attention to that waitress right then. Like, she's playing chess, but it definitely seems like something she has been at that restaurant a lot. And then the waitress talks to her, and in this sense of like, hey, I've noticed you've been here a lot. Who's winning the chess game? Because she's doing the whole Pixar thing where the guy is playing himself there, right?
The Pixar thing, yeah.
Right, yeah. You know. And like, I didn't put it together at that. I just got the idea of like, oh, she's into really nerdy things. She doesn't really fit in at school. She probably doesn't like it because she's getting bullied. This is just like the spot. Like, let's go get some fast food at fake McDonald's, or I don't remember what that thing was. Like, that's what I did in high school. I'd skip school to go get food, right?
Yeah, go sit in a Chili's for 4 hours.
Okay, well that was college, and I wasn't skipping, but I remember having I skipped school, but it was more like, hey, I'm in like AP art classes. I have a good relationship with my teacher. Hey, teach, you want something from Einstein Bagels? We're about to go. And she's like, no, you can't go. It's like, we're leaving. Bye. You want something? And she's like, coffee, please. And so we would get her stuff, and then she wouldn't say. So it worked out. But yeah, like, that's what we would do. We would just like go to McDonald's or go get bagels or go get pizza or something. And so I didn't think of it then. But that scene when he's filming her and he's asking her like about these websites and what she likes about them and all that stuff, and then the waitress comes and sits down, and immediately she lights up, and they're in this like, but did you see this? And Joe has no idea what they're talking about, but he has the like, let me take a step back and just like look at what is happening now, and he gets it right there, and I'm just like, oh, that makes sense for me now too, and so that makes sense for all these past things about why she feels like she doesn't fit in or needs to keep quiet, and stuff like that. I also felt like she had a crush on Cameron.
Maybe.
I think she was jealous of her sister that like Joni and
Oh,
Cameron
yeah.
got to like be friends
Yes.
so much, and she wasn't yet. And that is like, especially with the way the waitress looks, like she also has that kind of punk
Yes.
attitude too. And then Haley cuts her hair short and stuff like that, kind of like Cameron's at the start. So it was like, I wonder if she's been like secretly idolizing Cameron. And
Yeah.
there was that whole thing of that website that someone made that was a fan page of Cameron.
Oh, right.
I'm wondering if that was her. I
Huh.
don't know if they ever confirmed that.
No,
but
I forgot about that bit.
Yeah, I just like, back of my mind, they didn't really go into details on that. That's just like head canon. It seems like there were
that
some
makes sense.
clues of that stuff, but yeah, she was a great character though. Great stuff there. So yeah, I liked the way Joe was like, I'm gonna be this like surrogate father character for you, because I know that Gordon doesn't really understand some of the things that you're going through, so I'll help out with that stuff. That was good. That was fun.
And the season's about Joe figuring out, he's like, I want kids. And it's after like, spending the last decade like working with Gordon and like being around the girls. And that's one of the big breaking points in him and Cameron are like really boyfriend and girlfriend in this season for the first time, instead of just being these friends with benefits. Like they really give it a shot, which is very sweet. And she's like, I don't want kids. I tried to have kids with Tom and it didn't work. And I feel like the universe was telling me, yeah, this isn't for you. And so it's not something that ever gets discussed very much, but you can tell that that's an undercurrent of tension in their relationship and trying to figure out, is this something we can make happen long term?
Yeah, they definitely gave it a go and tried to make it work, and you could still see that it was just not working. The whole like trailer thing. Joe was like, I don't want to live in this trailer. That's not for me. Seems strange. Like Joe wants to be where the action is. Like he wants to be front and center, whereas Cameron wants to be like, hey, lock me in the basement, lock me in a trailer, like let me do my thing.
Yes.
And Joe just wanted nothing to do with that. Cameron, yeah, you mentioned she tried to have kids with Tom. I felt like she was just trying to be domestic with that.
Yeah.
Like she was like, well, I guess that's the next thing we do, right? Like, do you want kids? And there was that one scene where she was like, his face just lit up. Like, this is what he wanted. And so we tried and it didn't work, but it was also not really what I wanted. And so the fact that it didn't work was this sign of like, yeah, you don't want this. This is not for you. And so when Joe finally hits that realization of like, hey, I think I want a family too, she's just like, ooh, about that. Like that might not go over so well. Also, that's too many people for a trailer. So, I don't know.
Yeah, and like she's arguing with Joe about how he never comes out to the trailer, and he's like, I can't stand up in the trailer.
I'm so tall. Like, I can't do this.
Also, I've never seen Breaking Bad, but there is a scene when Cameron's setting up the trailer and like she is running around in a t-shirt and like brief underwear fighting like with the trailer hitch in the back in the mud. And I'm like, I think that's what that show was. Now I feel like I have seen it.
You're not wrong.
If you put underwear and trailer together, that's what Breaking Bad is. It's that and a chicken restaurant and a Bob Odenkirk.
There you go. Yeah. No, you absolutely should watch it because that show is great. But yeah, yeah, I think Cameron also hit some breaking points in this where she I think was potentially one of those characters where the technology started moving on without her. Um, we do know that at the end of this, she's going to be working with Donna once again. But Cameron is very much this character that, like I said, wants to do her own thing. She has a very specific vision for what she wants. And she doesn't like having people tell her what to do or how to fix it or stuff like that. She's like, I'm going to make it the way I want to make it because I've already thought through all of this stuff. And as we can see, that's like, it's like, well, yeah, but you're also like not doing best practices. You think you're respecting the player, but you're really not. Like, you're just like all of this, like she's so stubborn and like set in her ways there that I forget the girl's name. I think it was like Alex something.
Oh,
What was
Alexa.
the girl?
Yeah. Who's that girl
Alexa,
who's
yeah,
like a
that
fan
was
who
her name.
asks her a question at a panel. And then she comes back a couple episodes later like, yeah, I'm actually in the tech industry and I'd love to work with you on something. Like, what do you want to do? I leave it open to you.
Yeah, she seems to be more of the like money person of like, hey, if you have something that you want to do, I will make it happen. I will set you up with the right people. I will get you the investments, all of that stuff. It wasn't really clear
because this
about
girl
what
looks
she
like she's
was
like
doing.
26 years old. So I don't know how she got where she is.
She looks like she's 26 and is from like 2020. Like that's what she looks like, right? She had the slightly curved bangs that like fit her face. That is like a very, it's not necessarily punk, but it's the like, I don't know, like punk hipster stuff that we see nowadays.
A future punk that does not exist in this time. Like, I feel like I saw a clerk at Hot Topic in 2006 who looked exactly like her.
Right? Yeah. And I liked her character. I like, she seemed fine, but yeah, it's like she seemed to be more in the know of like, hey, video games are going in this direction. Like, great, you're working on the AI, but that's like, AI could also be used for so much more. Like, you're thinking small in this case, but I also asked you to create worlds, not AI, but I guess I can see how they would go hand in hand there. Like, you have to make those interactions to make the world feel alive and all of that stuff. But yeah, like it just felt like Cameron wanted to do this one specific thing, and no matter who she interfaced with was just like, okay, but what if we take that and then change it and make it bigger and for this other thing? And she was just like, no, I don't want that. And
yeah, I want to
like,
make this.
Technology is going in this direction, so why don't we go in that direction? She's just like, no, I want to do this thing.
Cameron is consistently making the absolute perfect product for like 20 people. And they're like, could you make this for a larger audience? And she's like,
yeah.
No, I like what I made for 20 people. Like, there's an arc this season where she's programmed this new game and she's done with Space Bike. And she made this new game called Pilgrim, which is very abstract and like very...
and the graphics were amazing for its time. Oh my god. Like that was like a PC that was like a PC game from like early 2000s. It looked like
it looks
in
great.
the early 90s. Wow, amazing.
Cameron's got those skills. But she's working on this game with Atari, and they're like, none of the players can figure this out. She's like, well, you got in guys who played Mortal Kombat for the focus testing group. Of course my game's not going to appeal to them. And they're like, nobody can figure this out. And like, she's
like, there's
got
no
these
instructions
demo discs she's handing out to people.
Manual.
And it's really it's ritual put anything in the manual. She's like, they're going to figure it out on their own. Like, I wanted to make a challenge. I wanted to make a very cerebral game. And the only person who's enchanted by this game, who gets it, who figures it out, who gets all the way to the end is Donna. Like, no matter how divisive those two can be with each other, they still understand each other on this very basic level.
Yeah.
It's so sweet.
They work well together because I think they challenge one another. Like I've had friendships like that where we would argue all the time on purpose, on stupid stuff, or on things that like actually mattered. And I think normally most people would be like, all right, I'm done with you. Like, I don't want this kind of stuff in my life. But I liked them, and I kept them around because they challenged me and was like, look, you're stuck in this way. You need to think about it this way because all of that stuff. And so like I liked that. I like those relationships, but I can see how they don't work out in the end, because that happened to me too. So just like it didn't work out in the end, but it was neat while it lasted, and I'm thankful. But yeah.
Yeah,
so we'll see. What do you think the idea was? Because Cameron has this, or not Cameron, Donna has this revelation of like, I have an idea. Let's work together. But they don't really say what it is.
Well, she's checking out at the diner, and she glances over at this guy at the jukebox. So I thought she'd just come up with the idea for iTunes or something
like
that.
Napster.
Like, what if... Yeah. Or what if you could buy one song for yourself to keep? Like, you made your own jukebox, and after you paid to fill the jukebox was
Windows
then free
Media
to you.
Player. Let's design skins for Windows Media Player. Yes, something like that would make sense. I thought it's like, oh, they're in a restaurant. Like, what if it's something with food? Of like, you could order food online or something like that. But yeah, I think the Napster thing makes sense, because that I think would be the next step in the internet of like, what if you can just download all the entertainment you want when you
it's just
want
the movie The Social Network, but you replace Justin Timberlake with Donna.
Yeah, well, Napster wasn't really social, but yeah. Oh well.
Donna's character, she's become so sharp and so hardened when we meet up with her again this season. And she's just this well-oiled machine of working at this venture capital building. She's very successful. She has this beautiful house with this pool. She has like wine and dine parties with friends, and has some handsome man sleep over that night. Like, she's on the surface, everything is perfect with Donna, but she's become so bristly and off-putting to keep things running that way. And there's a scene where she's out to dinner with Boz and Diane goes to the bathroom, and like Boz and Donna start arguing about something at work because he's helping out on their rival search engine project. And Donna yells at him so hard he has a heart attack.
Yeah. Well, that I think is like the straw that broke the camel's back, because
it's not 100% on Donna, but the fact that that's how that scene progresses. And then she's like sitting in the hospital waiting room, and Cameron comes up, and Cameron's crying, and she's like, not thinking about this is Donna, the woman who betrayed me. She's like, this is Donna, the woman who knows more about this situation because he's already been here. It's like, Donna, what's happening? How's Buzz? How long has he been in surgery? How long have you been waiting? Like, all she's focused on is Buzz. And Donna just like bristles right back at her. Like, she's got this option to like reconnect. There's this opportunity to sort of put some stuff behind them, have like a more important personal focus at the time, and she just bristles right back at Cameron and says something about like staying out of my life, and then she storms away.
I feel like there's a little bit more to it than that. I think the opportunity there was to say nothing, but unknowingly Cameron says we got into an argument this afternoon.
Yes.
And that's when Donna puts it together that Boz was the one that went to Cameron to create the algorithm that worked for the search engine that that Donna's team used. And it's this whole like, well, we can't really use that. We can if we buy it from you or stuff like that, but it's this weird sticky situation where the rival company is Donna's daughter's, it's Haley's, and Cameron hasn't told Joe yet, and like all of it's a mess. And Donna figures it out, and that's when she's just like, fuck this. Like, I like stay out of my life. Like, I don't want you, all of this stuff. Yeah. It blows up right there.
But she's so focused on doing good, like doing well and winning things and coming out on top, because she's always been like shoved to the side her whole life. Like, think back to like harried season 1 Donna trying to make the girls sandwiches while Gordon drinks a beer and stares into the middle distance, and she goes to her Texas Instruments job with her which is just always struggling to like pull a report together for that guy in time, and then she kisses the guy and he doesn't kiss her back. Like, all of this nonsense in Donna's life is fed into her trying to boil herself down to this pure success machine, and she like cannot look back on things in her life. Like, she can't answer to them. Every time, like, she's plenty of opportunities to like apologize or address something, but she just like, her past is this huge sticking point she can't get past, and she just doesn't talk about it at all.
I think Donna, her arc, and Haley's arc, and what's happening with the rival sites is an interesting counterpoint to Donna, because you said like she's so sharp, she's this like crazy businesswoman that knows what she wants and goes after it, and she gets it and all of that stuff. But then she has this like check to her where it's like, I could easily destroy Joe and Gordon, but it's my daughter's website. I can't. Like, she wants to beat them to be successful, but she can't just like outright stomp on them and stuff. And that's what I think she felt like the algorithm was, of like, well, now we have them beat, like, period. But if we didn't have that, it would have maybe taken a little bit more time to get there, which maybe they would have reacted to something. It's just this like, I think it softened her and made her think like, hey, there are certain things where I do need to be cutthroat and do need to go after, but maybe there are some things that I can be a little bit softer on, and we just need to see how it goes naturally and stuff like that. So
Donna is
liked it
a mom at her core. There's that scene where she invites this new coding team over to her house for a dinner party, and it's so tense, and she's trying to lighten the mood. She's like, okay, let's play a drinking game. She's like, I want everyone to participate. You can't back out. And the one woman on the team just sort of looks hesitant, and then Donna's like, oh no, oh my God, you're pregnant, aren't you? Oh my God, I wasn't even thinking about that. And she just sort of like crumbles, and then she like gives the woman a toast, and she just becomes so emotional thinking back to herself and her kids. Like, that's the core of her. And that's something Cameron sees too. Like, there's a moment where she's talking to Gordon or somebody about how he's stressed about the dealing with these kids now. And she says something like, look, don't worry about Haley. Haley has two awesome parents to guide her. Like, that's something, old Cameron, younger Cameron would have made fun of Donna for doing. That's a scene in season 2 where she's talking with Tom about how Donna's just trapped by these kids. And then Tom's like, you're talking in a public forum. You see that, right? Donna can see what you're saying. And like everybody turns around and stares at Cameron. She's grown from that to see like Donna's doing something very difficult and she is good at it. And no matter any of my other baggage with Donna, I can't fault her for that. She is a good mom.
Yeah, indeed. I think Donna ended up in a good place at the end of the show.
Yeah, I love her arc coming back together with Cameron and how they just sort of wordlessly fall back into this friendship. Like they're just after what happened with Boz, after what happened with Gordon, like they're just like they have to be civil with each other. They have to be conversational with each other. They have to, and they just sort of fall back into where they were. And there's a scene where they're packing up all of Gordon's stuff and like Cameron's sitting out in the back porch crying, and Donna comes out and tries to talk with her, and Donna starts crying. She's like, I miss Gordon and I miss you. And Cameron says, I'm here. And the final episode where Cameron's decided she's going to take her trailer and like drive to Florida, try and reconnect with her mom, try and find her new path in life. She goes to Donna's house to say goodbye. And Donna's planning for like some big party that night. There's all these caterers running around. And Cameron has something in her hands. I think it's like a tomato. And she like drops it on the ground. And then she's like, she tries to pick it back up. And she's got the gunk on her hands. And it's like then that Donna decides to like go in and like hug her. And it's so awkward, and Donna's like, I know how to do this. Let me hug her when she cannot hug me back because she's got like tomato on her hands. And it's Cameron's idea, like, hey, what if we started working together again? And Donna's like so taken aback. She's like, do you have an idea? And Cameron says, I don't, but that can come later. Like they've realized what we have is stronger than any faults it has had in the past. Like you are, after what's happened with Gordon, after what's happened with Joe, they're like, you are the best relationship in my life. Why don't we start this back up again?
There we go. I want to talk a little bit more about Joe really fast. It was an interesting scene that I want to know your take on. There's a scene where he goes to like get his tarot cards read and stuff like that. Goes to
Carol Kane.
Yeah. How did you read that scene?
She gives him a card. It's called the Ten of Swords. I think that's the name of the final episode. And it's like a guy with a bunch, like 10 swords, 10 whole swords stuck in his body. She's like, I know this looks very violent, but look at the clouds in the distance. Look at the sky behind him. There are these dark clouds. He's filled with 10 whole swords, but there's a light on the horizon. It's about getting past all of this to get to what that light is, which echoes something that multiple characters are saying in like the last episode or two, something way back from season 1. A computer is something that gets you to the next thing. It gets you to people. Like everything that's happened is the thing that gets you to the next thing. Like the giant wasn't the end all be all of your career. It got you to the people you worked on the giant with. And it got him to this relationship with Cameron, and that didn't work out. But that's going to get him to whatever his next thing is. And maybe that will be the true thing in his life where he can rest.
Yeah. What happened to Joe's mom?
We still don't know.
Did you take that as that character being Joe's mom?
No. I think she would recognize him, even if she hadn't seen him since
what I thought,
he was like 12.
I don't know, because like the thing we do know with his mom is that she was very alcohol dependent or drug dependent and stuff like that. So there is a chance where she might not. Like she might not remember what he looks like and stuff. And that's kind of what I read that scene as, that he ended up finding his mom, who is this fortune teller, and he went to her and it looked like he was about to tell her something, and then he saw this like younger kid walk in, which seemed to be like a grandkid or something.
Yeah.
And
it's her grandson Osiris.
Just like, yeah, and I think he had second thoughts then of like, oh, it looks like you have a new family. It looks like you found something that has kept you stable. I don't want to ruin that or like step in that, because I think at this point, Joe, at least in the tech space, knows what he kind of does. Like he knows he can kind of manipulate people and turn relationships sour and stuff like that. And so I think he sees this and was about to be like, hey, I just like, you're my mom, just FYI. But then he has second thoughts and decides against it, because it looks like he's about to say something or do something and then changes his mind when he sees this kid. So I think, yeah, that's just him being like, I don't want to mess up what you have. I'm just gonna, it was nice to see you and know what happened. I'm just gonna let that one be.
Maybe. I saw her as a mother type figure. I wasn't thinking of her as literally his mom, because he said last season that she died. Not that we had any more information, that she died. I wondered if maybe he had like a lot of
completely wrong. I may have read that completely wrong. Then if
maybe it's supposed to be
died,
up for you to interpret. I read it as like maybe he had a lot of personal things he wanted to say, but he's like, I'm not going to unload it on this woman with like a grandkid watching cartoons in the next room. Like, I'm just going to be quiet and just sort of see if I give her nothing, what do I get out of it? What do the cards tell me? And the cards tell him, go be a professor somehow. So like he leaves that fortune teller shop. He almost gets run over by a car, which echoes the very first scene of the show where he's driving up to Cardiff Electric and he like hits an armadillo with his car, and he's like, huh. And then he just gets in the car and keeps driving. And it's like some old friend from his IBM days, and he's like, are the leaves changed up there in Armonk, New York yet? And then the finals, and then like it's this bookend. We get Joe in the first season, the first scene of the final episode, and the last scene of the final episode. Everything else in between is just Donna and Cameron. And we come back to him, and he's a professor. And that has to be the next year. There's no way he became a professor that quickly. I mean, a professor of something ambiguous. If it seems like it's already probably fall, I think the series ends and we've at least made it to 95.
I mean, he can teach business. He can teach computer science. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff.
He doesn't know computer science. He barely knows it.
I don't know exactly. I'm saying computer science because he knows some stuff of like how to code and do all this. So he could be teaching that stuff. I'm not a computer guy. I don't know programming or computer science, so that's why I'm just defaulting to computer science. But yeah, like he could do that this next year, and he has the credentials of the thing of like, hey, I worked on this, I did that, I was here when this thing, like,
hey, I had an antivirus software company, and now I'd like to teach literature, please. I'm Joe McMillan. I'm very tall.
But we don't know if he's teaching literature. He has
the humanities department. It is like literature, history, things like that.
He could be teaching like the history of technology and stuff like that, or
maybe he is. We don't know. All we see is that he seems at peace with himself. He's back to having his sharp suits and his fancy car, but he doesn't have the same ego that he had back in season 1. You know, there's the giant, there's a photo of Cameron, photo of Gordon. He's got a little picture of Haley up there, and he goes to this classroom of kids who are like all in a circle, indicating he is the cool professor. And he's like,
Let me start.
He's like,
by
let me
asking a question.
And it's the same question he asked Cameron's class back in 1983, which I don't remember exactly, but it's something like, where are computers going to take us in the next... what is true about computers today that you can say will be true about them 5 years from now? Something like that. I've been meaning to go back and like rewatch the first episode to see like,
how
what are other bookends of this
mimics
show?
it. Yeah. 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 I don't know. But this was a damn good show.
Yeah, another thing I want to mention, we haven't talked much about Boz, but after Boz gets his heart attack, God, the scene where he goes in for a checkup and the doctor gives him a clean bill of health after that, like, you've recovered nicely, you're doing well, your numbers look good. I think it's like 94 at this point. He's like, you're going to live into the 21st century. And Boz is like, me? In the 21st century? And he leaves the doctor's office walking in slow motion while they play astronaut music.
Right? Yeah. He has this like... He has this strange relationship with that because, yeah, he thinks it's about his time, and he kind of wants it to be his time. He's done with business.
Like he's willing to accept it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's gotten into some bad luck. He's wasted a bunch of money, and he just wants to be like, Lord, just take me away. I'm done with this. And they're just like, nope. You're gonna deal with Y2K. You're gonna figure out what Napster is, and
oh my God, yeah. We go far enough in the future. We get to see Boz try and figure out a QuickTime player.
Yeah,
I would love for this show to come back and do like a one-off reunion special, where it is like 2005 and we check in with everybody and how their lives continue to grow and how they come back together. That's what I left this series with, such a good feeling, having figured out that was the MO of the show, that you're just watching these lives continually roll along, and we're gonna code and release version 4.3 of Joe. You're never done with anything. You're always working on yourself, working on your professional life, working on your relationships. Like, you're not done. And that made me feel better about the show ending, and how like it didn't hit certain things I wanted, but I'm like, oh, that's fine because it's not over. Yeah. Like, like the last time we saw Joe and Cameron together probably isn't the last time they ever are together. Maybe they'll talk again. Maybe their relationship will get better. Their friendship will get better. There's so much room for opportunity left out there on this unseen horizon, and it feels very comforting. Yeah,
indeed. I do like where Boz ended up too, because I was starting to feel real bad for him in this series, because he was always kind of the like lovable. He was always the like lovable character that just didn't really fit in. He didn't really know what was going on half of the time.
Yeah, he's just the loud uncle of the show.
Yeah. And he was just good. He was fun to watch. It was nice when he was there. And then this one, man, they just drug him through the mud. And it was just like, oh, Boz, no. Like, I love you, Boz. Don't do this. No, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm so happy he lived. He married Diane all of a sudden. He's maintained that relationship with Cameron. I think that comes out on top as the best and the most consistently good relationship in the
Very
show.
Wholesome.
Like, even after he like votes her out of the company towards the end of season 3, she forgave him for that. And like the first time they see each other in years is when she comes back and like wanders into Gordon's birthday party and she sees him there. They're back to hugging. They haven't seen each other in like 3 years, but nothing's really changed. It's very sweet.
Yeah. It's a good show. That was a good relationship. Yeah, I like this. I loved this show. I thought it was wonderful. I know performance-wise, it never really did super well on AMC. I think the pilot was the only time it broke over 1 million viewers. So it had really, really low ratings, but everyone loved it, and it just kept getting better and better. I don't necessarily agree with the fact that it kept getting better and better, but it was solid all the way
Yeah,
through. I loved it. Season 4 was phenomenal. I think a lot of people by now have put this on their like list of like, hey, of the 2010s, this is one of the best TV shows. So this is up there with the Mad Men and the Breaking Bad and all of that stuff, which is strange because all of those were AMC shows and The Walking Dead, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
guess Halt and Catch Fire is just like the kid sibling of all of those. Yeah,
their best stuff. I mean, I wouldn't even say kid sibling. It's just the like, it's the one that didn't get the attention, but is still just so good.
Maybe because it's not exactly thrilling. It's not plot heavy. It's a very small, intimate, character-based series.
Yeah. It's not as like, ooh, drugs and cartels and zombies and
yeah, like there's no like huge plot twists. I think like the biggest plot twist that the series has is just
it's not like season
Donna
1 of
telling
Mr.
Cameron,
Robot.
like, no, Diane said you had to fire the swap meet guys. Like, all of the hugest things that happened in the show are, in the grand scheme of things, very
real
small. There's no action. It's
there is no I am the one that knocks, right? There is no moments like that. But
I can see how it flew under the radar, but I really hope this is a show people come back to. It's so sweet. I love its energy. I love its I love the weird chaos energy that surrounds it.
Last two things that I kind of want to commend this show for is both showing women in the tech space, because that is it was and still kind of is a rarity. I know today it's 1 million times better than it was before, but it's still, there's still this stigma that's out there. There's still this way of thinking that it's just like, a woman? What's going on there? But this show does a wonderful job with that and making them excellent characters and showing their struggles, as well as including some LGBTQ side of things, with Joe, like one of the main characters, being gay, and like we mentioned in this one, Haley being gay. And yeah, I thought that was really, really wonderful, like that they included that, because I think it's very easy, I think, to take a look at the times and be like, well, it was there, but it was very, very hush hush. Like you did, like, they could have cut that out entirely and still be fine and still have been like, well, that's pretty accurate for what it was. But I think they did decide to include that, and I think that was really important. Of like, hey, no, it was actually happening back then, and it's good to see in a quality television show like this. So, good on them. Good on them.
Yeah, I love this cast a lot.
Yeah, indeed. Melissa, what was your favorite season? Was it this one? Was it season 4?
I do appreciate how cohesive season 1 is, and that it's got its mission statement They're in the
Yeah.
forefront very early on, and season 1 is kind of this self-contained thing almost, where like, here's the goal, they get to that goal by the end of the season. And like, if you were curious about the show, you could watch just season 1 almost on its own, and then like leave the show alone for a while and not feel. I mean, I'm compelled by the characters, but like plot-wise, season 1's kind of self-contained. I do love so much of season 4. We didn't even talk about the episode where that's just Joe and Cameron on the phone with each other the entire day. It's really sweet. And there's a bit where she's been in Japan for 3 years. She's really out of touch with like a lot of Western pop culture. And he's just describing Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to her like, well, it's this man who grows up in Philadelphia, and one day he's playing basketball with his friends, and he gets into a fight, and his mom's very worried about this, and then she decides to send him to live with his uncle and aunt in Bel Air, California.
It's probably gang related. That's why it was such a big deal. It was good.
Yeah, season 4's got some very strong emotional things and strong. It's so funny. The show is really funny a lot of the time.
Yeah, it was good stuff. Good stuff indeed. Other final thoughts? Do you have a favorite character or anything like that?
God.
I've
written. Kyle, I write down so many notes. Like I couldn't even. How many words of notes did I write down about season 4 alone? Will Evernote tell me what's my word count? That's spell check. That's not helping. I write so much about this series. I really love it. I wanted these notes to like have something to return to.
Look back on, yeah.
To remember the good times and all the quotes I had. Oh, like when Joni's, she's reacting poorly. She's a really big attitude when they're packing up the house after Gordon dies and getting rid of all their stuff, and like, and Donna finds these college forms that she didn't send in because Haley's like, I don't think I want to go to college right away. I want to travel. And like they have this huge fight, and then Cameron's like, I'm going to go try and talk to her. Like I was like that at that age. And Cameron's like, you're acting like such a huge dick to your mom, and I get it. When I was your age, I was like that too. I was queen big dick.
Yeah. She was like, I was a big dick. I was queen big dick.
Right. And like as much as the show doesn't have like
strange.
a lot of plot follow through because it's so light on plot, there are so many motifs that keep reappearing. Like there's a scene in the final episode where Joni goes to travel in Thailand, takes a gap year, goes to travel in Thailand, and she calls her mom talking about how she went to this temple, and she's like bowing her head down in the mud and the dirt, and it starts raining, and it's a spiritual moment. And she's like, I felt connected to Dad in that time. I felt like, like the earth was telling me like Dad's still out there. Dad's still with me. It's a very sweet scene, and it makes me think of when they're digging that big hole in season 1. Still one of the highlights of the series for me. It was the episode where Donna goes out of town and Gordon has to watch the girls and cook them stew and dig a big hole in the backyard. Like, when you've got dirt and like those are the two of the strongest moments in season 1, when he's digging the hole in the dirt and then when he's lost out there during the hurricane. So yeah, the fact that there's this final moment in the final episode about him dealing with dirt and rain. Oh, like there's a lot of like odd little follow throughs like this throughout the show that I think are interesting.
Good stuff. I think I have to say my favorite character ended up being Cameron. Didn't always like her, but I thought she had the most ups and downs and was maybe the most interesting to follow outside of Joe. But Joe like was so hot in season 1 in that sense, and then kind of cooled off and was like, okay, like I maybe shouldn't be that kind of character. And he came into his own and stuff like that, but I think Cameron was you had to kind of wrestle her into submission, and I think because it was so much work, it was a challenge, and that's what I appreciated
Yeah.
about her character. So there you go.
Yeah, we had
Good
such
stuff.
a variety of arcs in this series, having characters start at. We had some ages in season 4 that help like age the characters where they start in season 1. Like Joe's 35, I think Gordon and Dawn are 30, and Cameron's probably like 22. So to see these characters start at different points in their life and like where they go over the next decade. Like all their journeys are really different. You watch some characters dig themselves into holes. Season 1 is Joe digging himself into a hole, and season 2 is him saying, I need to not do that anymore. And you watch him try and like, who keeps putting a shovel in my hands? No, I don't want the shovel. I don't want to be that Joe again. I have to stop.
Exactly. I swear I'm not a hurricane. I promise.
I'm good. I'm moving to California.
This was a great show. I really like this. I'm interested in checking out more stuff from these creators.
Yeah.
So I know we've mentioned Chris Cantwell a number of times, but Chris Rogers too was also the co-creator on this. I'd be interested in seeing what else they have created. I know this was their first TV thing.
Wow.
So they could be working on more stuff. I know Chris Cantwell is writing comics right now. He's written Doctor Doom. He's currently writing Iron Man, stuff like that for Marvel. So some interesting stuff out there indeed. Melissa, let's get on to recommendations.
Yeah.
I think we have to start with being like, well, hey, we kind of picked this as a good companion piece to Mr. Robot.
Yes.
That would be a good recommendation. If you like the whole tech space, if you want more of the like hacker side of things, that is a phenomenal show to check out.
And they're both
I really
formatted
enjoyed that.
very differently. Like Mr. Robot is very much like it's very idealistic. It's about society. It has this very big picture, whereas *Halt and Catch Fire* is very insular. It's just like about these people specifically, their interpersonal relationships. The show takes 11 years to tell its story, whereas *Mr. Robot*, all of that show happens in like 8 months. And it's the same amount of time. They're both like 40 episode series. So they both operate in a similar space, but use such different storytelling methods.
Absolutely, yeah. They're different shows, like they're vastly different, but they're good companion pieces. So we can both recommend that one. Something else, I chose to kind of go a different route because I don't know if I know very much besides the obvious things that I'm thinking of. Like, you can watch Mad Men, like that's this kind of drama, not in the tech space, but more in the advertising space. But Mad Men is more about shitty people doing shitty things to each other, whereas this, I don't think you could describe it as that. I think they have their shitty moments, but I don't know if you could really walk away with saying they're shitty people doing shitty things to one another, right? But I think that would be up there for something else to check out. But I also want to recommend the movie Office Space.
I just watched Office Space again for the first time since I was like 15.
It's so good. It's a comedy, so it doesn't also like it doesn't fit with this exactly, but it is in that like 90s office space that is going on there, and it's about these characters who it's so we got to see the Joe McMillans, the top dogs. This is more so about the team of programmers and coders and stuff like that, and the stuff that they go through. And they are fed up. They hate it. They don't like it. They just have a boring job, and they decide to basically reenact the plot of like Superman 3 and steal a bunch of money from their company just by siphoning off like cents, because their transactions just they round off the numbers and stuff. So what if we take those things that it rounds off and make a lot of money? Yeah, it's one to check out, indeed. Melissa, what else did you have to recommend?
A couple weeks ago, I watched the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is not similar to this, except for when who is it? Is it Richard Dreyfuss, whoever the dad of the movie is? When he encounters the UFO at the beginning, you watch him become obsessed with this UFO. He's fixated on it. His family doesn't understand, and it gave me a lot of Gordon vibes.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, where he's just like building the tower out of mashed potatoes, where his family just like stares at him tensely, like just heaping him onto his plate and like carving at it with a fork. And he looks up and he's like, "Hey, I know you're not used to seeing your dad like this. So if you want another like 70s, 80s era dad just sort of like crumbling, you can watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind." I know, this
Can't
is
wait
also
for
something
Netflix to have a whole section of that 70s and 80s dads crumbling.
I love crumble dads. That's my favorite genre.
Crumble dads.
This, Venture Brothers, a lot of things. I would recommend, I feel like we always use this as a crutch because we can tie this show back to everything we do somehow. Lost. Donna's arc reminded me of Sun's arc, kind of, and that you think it's just this very harangued, stressed out wife who just exists as like the consequences of her husband's actions. And then she develops her whole own character. You find out how cunning she is, how secretive she can be.
Yeah.
And if you remember, like later season Sun, sort of like how conniving and sharp and cold she can be at some moments.
Yeah. Interesting pick. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like comics and stuff that I could mention. I don't know. I think, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and recommend Why the Last Man. I think that's an interesting one to pitch with this. So that one is maybe a more grand adventure, but it is about this event that happens that kills off all the male mammals. So all the male humans, dogs, and all sorts of stuff, except for one guy and his pet monkey. And he is the last man on Earth. He has no idea what happened, but his girlfriend was in Australia at the time, so he is trying to get to Australia, but he has to kind of conceal himself because the world is in chaos, but he's also the last man on Earth, so there are people that want to kill him and study him and have sex with him and repopulate the Earth with him, and he just like, I don't want to deal with all that. I just need to go find my girlfriend. But he ends up teaming up with a scientist, an assassin, and some other people along the way. And yeah, you think it's, I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, it is about like what happened and all of this stuff, but you meet some really, really interesting characters that I think, yeah, part of the draw of that book is to see those characters interact and to see how they grow and change. And it's an interesting book. I think you all should check it out. So there you go.
Something else I want to talk about is that I made another playlist again.
Okay.
I haven't done this for every one of our monthly ongoing series. I did it for Venture Brothers and Mr. Robot, and I've done it for this one now. It's called There Is a Giant in this playlist, and I made it entirely out of songs from the time period of the show. So it's nothing from after 1994.
Cool. We'll have to put the link in the description of all of this stuff.
Yeah. These are fun to make. I'm not inspired to do these every time, but when I am, it's a fun little project for me to work on.
Cool. Good stuff. Melissa, you and I have not really talked about what we are going to do for next month.
Yeah.
I do have an idea. I don't know if we just want to go with that one or if we want to take one more week and announce it this next week. But the idea I have would be a 3-parter, and it's an anime. We have not done one of those for this monthly series yet. So what are you thinking? Do you want to hear what it is and see if we can go with that, or should we wait and announce it this next week?
Yeah, for these monthly series, I like to check them out first. Like, I can get invested in something for like a week or two at a time, but if I'm going to be spending like 3 months, I want to test the waters first and make sure I'm going to be interested in this for 3 whole months.
Yeah. You know exactly what this is, and I think I do you want me to just say it?
Yeah.
So I'm not jumping around, Melissa. I think we should have a hot Gundam summer. I think we should watch the original Mobile Suit Gundam. It's like 40 something episodes, so it would be like three things of like 14 of 14 each. So it wouldn't be super long. It wouldn't be a lot to consume. But the animation is older. It's from 1979. That would be one idea. I do have some backups, which is why I was like, we could also, like, I have some more things we could announce it this next week. But that is the one that's like, I still need to get Melissa to watch some Gundam, especially since we just watched Pacific Rim. It might be nice to go check that out.
What if I just watch Pacific Rim 40 more times?
I don't know if you'd get the same thing. But yeah, we can decide later on if you want. But that is one thing that I was thinking about. So there we go. Cool. Well, for next week, we already have it picked out. I pitched the things last week. Let me pull up this information here again. I should have had that up. We are reading the first 2 volumes of a comic called The Unwritten. This was published by Vertigo Comics, which now no longer exists, but it is a part of DC Comics now. This is written by Mike Carey with art by Peter Gross. And the plot is kind of like, what if Harry Potter was based on a real person, but now this real person is starting to doubt his own existence and maybe might think that he is in a book himself, that he is a a character in a book himself there. So it just adds this like extra meta layer to that. I have heard good things about this series, but I have not heard much. So I thought it would be neat to check that out, and that is what we went with. This is available on Comixology Unlimited. So yeah, you guys can go check out the first couple volumes with that. We will only be reading the first 2 for this next week. So there you go. I think that's it, though. I think that's all we got.
Yeah.
So, Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Wilkywit. That's WILKYWIT. We'll have a link to the Spotify playlist, but my Spotify username is Dracula Trophy. You can also find it that way. Listen to my other podcast, Saturday Morning Obscurities, where me and my brother Jams talk about weird old kids shows you feel like only you remember. And I recently recorded another episode of Your Friendly Neighborhood Filmcast with friend of the show, Jack. And I talked about the movie Uncut Gems. I don't know when that'll be coming out. But if you like Halt and Catch Fire, I would also recommend Uncut Gems. It's got the similar, very chaotic, messy energy to it. It's also a very insular story. Like, you're just going to watch a couple people screw up, and it's not so much about any larger picture.
Gotcha. Cool. Good stuff. Excited to check all that stuff out. You guys can find me at YoKyleSpringer on Twitter. And if you want to stay up to date with all we do here at the Whatnauts, you guys can follow us on Twitter at the Whatnauts. So be sure to go like, share, subscribe, all of this stuff. You guys know how all that works. Yeah. I think that is about it. This wraps up 154 of the Whatnauts review show. So we will see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.